Welcome to this episode, a special episode, the 100th episode of the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
I'm Gayatri.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, we've been bringing you stories of people and what they learned the hard way, what worked, what didn't work, etc. And this is our 100th episode. Hi, Chitra. Hi, Gayatri. It's actually a very, very moving moment for me, that we are touching 100 episodes on the Software People Stories.
Hi Shivji. Hi Chitra. I feel the same, even though I've been the youngest to just join the podcasting team. And we call ourselves powercasters, and that itself gives me a lot of power within ourselves. I'm so happy that we are doing this.
Thanks, Gayatri. Hey again to both of you. For me, it's been unbelievable that we've got this far, and given me a lot more faith and confidence both in myself and in the fact that collaboration and teamwork can really people manifest their dreams. So to me, that's what it's meant so far, at least.
Yeah, true that. I had this idea a few years ago. It was more about how can we share something that we have learned that will be useful for others. So I thought it could be technical, but then the conversations with people, particularly these being unscripted conversations, kind of naturally eased into their sharing their stories. And I don't think I would have been able to sustain this or had this enthusiasm if I were to just go it alone. And the fact that you both also joined, that much additional energy has come in, and then we are also able to bring in different guests, different styles in which we engage with them. And I find in every episode, even though the editing part seems to be a little painful, it's worthwhile. At the end of that, based on the comments that we get, or people who are still shy to come on the podcast, but say that this is something that they found relevant or they're able to relate to. Have you had
that for me has been a revelation of sorts. Just to go back a little in time, I remember in 2001 when FM radio came to Bangalore, and I used to listen to these two RJs carry on with their banter, and it was so lively, refreshing, and energizing because I used to listen to it on the bus. The bus used to play this radio channel all the way where I used to work near Electronic City until I reached home. And it sort of made the journey that much more easier. And in my mind, I was thinking, I really want to be an RJ someday. A friend managed to arrange short conversation with these RJs. And I was so blown away and fascinated with what they were doing. So this for me is an opportunity to, listen to the voice of people, literally. And I've also been a fan of radio more than video or television because I personally, I feel I listen and learn a lot better than when watching something. So, and like what you said, Shiv, many guests have also said that they've opened up and shared stories that they've never probably shared before, thanks to this medium. So it must be something there in it for them to have opened up that way. What about you, Gayatri?
I totally agree with you. I think I speak a lot in any conversation. So that gravitated me towards podcasting or a speaking medium. And what has attracted me what has made me stay, that was more of an initial attraction. What has made me stay is the plethora of tools that we use behind the scenes, be it Audacity or these tools that we are using for marketing as well as keeping it. Those digital tools has enamored me and has to some extent moved me out of my comfort zone. And that has propelled me to continue to stay outside my comfort zone in the what I do. Even though we do it more as a paying it forward, telling stories which are not told elsewhere. The similar stories that I've heard from the speakers. Hey, this is a journey that I have taken. I have never told it to anybody. This is something that they said, hey, I have taken such steps, which is be the 4 innings career that Zafar was mentioning. Different people have come back and said, outstanding, this idea itself that came up in the podcast, I want to take it further. So that has been a very grounding moment for me when I think about the podcasting itself.
Yeah, wonderful. I can relate to both of what you said. In fact, radio has been my fascination right from school, because that was the only thing we had in terms of variety of audio. And I also had a hobby, and it's called DXing, not so popular nowadays with all the other technology. And I almost went to jail for it, but that, of course, is a story for another day. But overall, the medium of audio and what you can convey through audio was definitely very, very interesting as an experiment. And even though I'm not trained in music, at least Carnatic music, my ability to relate or say that this song is like something else, and through that derive what probably the raga is and all that, was also something that I guess was close to me in terms of sounds. And of course, tools, trying to use different tools. And then looking at different podcasters, some of them who are so finicky about the kind of equipment that you have, and then how you need to have a mixer, balancer, all that. I thought, why is it that you need such a high fidelity for a conversation? Okay, and fortunately, our the quality of the tools and technology available today has made it much easier. And of course, a lot of patterns that I found in different people that I've been talking to, because first is they're all happy to just take a pause and reflect. And then the S curves that they talk about in their own careers or their own personal lives also relates to whatever we have been using as one of the major themes in our coaching transformations and all that, about the S curves and how one needs to keep renewing oneself. And in fact, this whole podcasting was also one more challenge that I had set for myself, saying, what can I learn new? Now, as I was going to approach 60, saying that I have to do, the same thing is fine. So then this looked like, at least it will give me a lot of opportunity to learn, get over some of my inhibitions of just not calling friends. For a long time, that, yeah, we'll talk to them sometime. This at least says that, okay, let me make a call. Okay, shall we have a conversation? I think that way it has been very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, in fact, that's a great way to reconnect back with people. And I love the surprise element that it creates for them in saying, so the first reaction is usually, what will I speak on a podcast? I said, don't worry, we'll just have a casual conversation and see how that turns out. And I think the fact that they've all been pleasantly surprised is a great feeling for me as a co-host personally. And like what you said, Gayatri, both you and Shiv said, in terms of the tools that are available, it was simply fascinating. And Shiv, you said patterns. While editing, it's become sort of intuitive to know or recognize the waveform of an or an ah or a pause or an inflection, which sort of makes editing easier, but also allows you to kind of introduce an element of naturalness in the conversation as well. So, yeah, in fact,
maybe you could become an audio forensic expert if there is one like that.
Oh yeah, I've actually thought about that. In fact, when I was editing some videos, I was just thinking that if some of the video tools had the flexibility and audacity, if I may, of the audio tools, I think that would make life a lot more simpler. And suddenly, all kinds of ideas of how to mix sound, voiceover, video. There's so much to be learned. So the learning is, I think, continuous. And Gayatri and I have spoken to it, I think, in both of our podcasts where we kind of interviewed each other. That made for some really good practice sessions and a wonderful podcast in itself.
I totally echo with you, Chitra, being from electronics and communication background, right? The audio forms actually helped me first is reconnect my education, but it was also fascinating to see how audio forms are, how do you amplify, how many decibels to keep, so that somebody who listens isn't jarring for their ears, right? So, many podcasts I've heard where suddenly there will be a very high sound and suddenly there will be low sound. Most of the podcasts, at least I listen to during my commute or during when I walk. I don't want to keep fiddling around the audio and stuff. So I do like the whole concept of having technology behind it, but it is very seamless when somebody hears it. When somebody hears our podcast, they are not able to believe that there is a level of post production work that is happening. So I find that very fascinating. Just the fact that they don't even know such a thing is one thing that I'm more enjoying, that I didn't have earlier before podcasting, is the level of reach. Different globally, how many different people are there? How they all started, right? They all have started at one stage, and what types of decisions they have taken. At different people have taken different decisions, be it from a geographical perspective or career wise, whether they had to go small or go big, or what kind of a doubts they had. So everybody has had their doubts, and what comes out is their resilience and just pure grit that comes in. I find that very moving, And I've had such very varied emotions during that. That I find it very, deserving to talk about. Just having that kind of a conversation, which is emotionally touching.
Yeah, the other thing which I kind of been enjoying is to get someone to agree to be a host. I don't know what your experience has been. It has been all over the spectrum. While some of them are very happy, they say, yeah, let's do it. I mean, let me try what it is. But I find many people having hesitation saying, I don't know if I have anything to share. Oh, mine has not really been anything exciting that will be interesting for others, or who will listen, how many people will listen, or what do I don't think my voice is suitable for audio, or I'll probably write and give you. So, getting them to get over their own inhibitions or some of these doubts has also been a good, fairly therapeutic for me, because these are all people, most of them I've known them in some context or the other, and obviously we've had a lot of conversations. At that time, the hesitation, there was not that. In fact, there was one person, in fact, he has also mentioned it in his message for us, that he's a very shy and non-talkative person. I had two conversations with him before the recording, and one conversation went on for almost an hour. I said, see, we have already spoken for an hour. Did we not find topics to talk about? Did we not find how to express that we had our points of view? And these are definitely useful for somebody else. And because these are not documented or cannot be documented in a structured manner, and once you put it in writing, there is definitely that emotion that is lost when people share their stories. So it has been very enriching for me to see that turnaround in people, at least they getting over maybe some of their inhibitions. And I guess I have also been able to get over some of mine. So do you have any such stories?
I certainly do. In fact, I was very, very conscious, I think, when I recorded my first podcast. So, Shiv, as you remember, we had to record my podcast as a guest twice over. I still remember the feeling of my breath being caught, me not being able to breathe, and having a complete brain freeze in terms of what to say next. Am I saying the right thing? How is it sounding? All of those thoughts coming in vis-a-vis simply allowing myself to say whatever it is that came and then look at it later. So that personally for me was something nice to overcome. The second thing was actually prompting guests to talk. So I still remember the initial conversations, and I have to say a big thank you to my early guests here, because they were as tolerant of me as I was for the whole session, to just allow it to flow in any which way it did. So if somebody were to actually listen to the raw recording of those episodes, there's a lot of chuckling, giggling, and saying, oh my God, I forgot what I wanted to ask you. So give me a minute. Let me think about what I want to ask you. And then the guests will be laughing on the other side. And sometimes they would come back with, I don't think I said that quite right. I want to say it again in another way. And I'll say, okay, go ahead. And so I think helping each other ease into a conversation is something that's very beautiful that comes out in almost all recording and episodes that I've done. So for me, that's a big takeaway. It's also, I think, enabled for me to learn how to engage people in a conversation, which kind of takes me back in time to one thing that my father said. He said, doesn't matter what qualification you have or how quote unquote successful you are in life. Remember, one thing is that having the ability to talk to a 2-year-old and an 80-year-old, doesn't matter who they are and from where they are, is so important. So learn that. And I always remember that when recording or engaging people in a conversation.
So where am I on your scale? Am I still a teenager or?
Age no bar.
Okay.
I agree with both of you. I've had both sides of the spectrum. One, some set of people, I just asked, hey, I've always wanted to appear in your podcast because I've listened so many. So that is one side of the spectrum. The other side is, I would be honest, there are quite a few people whom I've tried who have still not appeared in our podcast. And there are a few, after quite a few tries, they felt they didn't have enough to contribute. And when you speak about that a little bit more and said, hey, there's so much value in your journey itself, then they slowly open up. And then, I mean, that is the very beautiful transformation by itself. I remember the first podcast that Shivji and I was the guest. Shivji came over in our house and said, "What are we going to talk about?" I don't know, we will just talk. It might be interesting to just see all the tools, and brought his bag of podcasting material and everything. So it was fun to watch, and it continues to stay fun for me. The transformation of people for podcast as a medium, because it's given that it's a new medium, that also is a very one. And what Chitra you said is very clear, right? When we also coach, we coach saying that you should not look down at people and you should not look up at people. If you do both, what happens is your own persona changes. When you look down at somebody, what you're saying is they are a level lower than you. And consciously, when you look up at people, it's also your, even though you are not, you may not say this externally, unconsciously you may be having those biases. So the having those podcasts where, irrespective of the age group as well as number of years of experience, that I keep, that coaching background helps me in the podcast. While this has helped in many other areas, but that also helps me in terms of keeping that conversation real, as well as keeping it very trusting and respectful.
Yeah, I think we're all richer for having been on this side of the podcast. We've also been on the other side. And one of the things that I have enjoyed, and some people have felt that a little bit probably uncomfortable, saying that you throw all these googlies. And that makes the conversation, like you say, more natural. And then it is not rehearsed. It is not something that you are trying to put on a show or a message that you want to convey and all that. And I think with that, after this episode, I'm hoping that a lot more people would like to come and share their stories. We keep asking. Yes, we have a lot of people whom we know, but then there are a lot of stories, a lot of heroes who are not visible outside probably their own cubicles because they've just not spoken about it.
And I think that is exactly what powering me to stay with it and continue, is that there's so many stories that need to be told. And I always feel that the more the stories out there, you never know who it inspires or motivates. So that's my motivation to continue and stay with Software People Stories. So yes, would love to see how many people could sign up or want to sign up to be guests.
Totally agree. I think we want more people to sign up, and it doesn't matter what role anybody is playing. Right? Every role is richer, and every story inspires different segments of people or different personas of people. Right? So that's what I'm looking forward to. More 100 more episodes to come. It's humbling that we have reached red and second year anniversary. Thank you for being such great co-hosts, Shivji and Chitra, and letting me stay as your apprentice.
Yeah, definitely. Without your patience, of my idiosyncrasies and all that, I don't think I would have stayed. Or the fact that we've been able to come this far. And of course, all our listeners, thank you for all the love that you're showing. And wherever you are in the world, whenever you're listening, think about how you can share your stories with us. We look forward to talking to all of you.
Yeah, certainly for me, three's company, and the more the merrier. Okay, a big thank you to all our listeners and to all our guests as well for all your support, your love, and a very, very patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. And you can always reach us all at podcast@pmpowerconsulting.com. Thank you.